I grew up. I came of age in the late 70s, 14, 15, 16 years old in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And we tend to associate particular decades with particular things, particular people and events. For example, the 1940s, World War II, the 1950s, sock hops, Elvis, conformity. And some decades, what we associate, it shifts as the decade progresses. So the early part of the 1960s, basically more of the 50s. The later part of the 1960s, what we now simply call the 60s, hippies and acid trips, protests and Vietnam. The early part of the 1970s, basically more of the 60s. And the later part of the 1970s, the late 70s. I want to try to describe to you what it was like to grow up in the late 70s. But the thing is, it's kind of tricky because growing up in the late 70s was characterized not so much by the presence of a particular thing, but more by the absence of a particular thing. So, actually, you know what does a pretty good job of showing that, believe it or not, is the movie E.T., the Extraterrestrial. How many people here have seen E.T.? Yeah. So, even though it wasn't released till 1982, it very much showed a group of young people somewhere out in the suburbs of some California town growing up, coming of age in the late 70s. Those of us who have seen it, we no doubt remember that in the beginning, E.T. is accidentally left behind on Earth by his alien friends. Eventually, he figures out how to phone home and then is rescued by his alien friends. But what we might not remember quite so clearly are a lot of the details from the first half of the movie. After E.T. is accidentally left behind, he's discovered by this kid named Elliot in Elliot's backyard tool shed. And before too long, Elliot has introduced E.T. to his older brother, his younger sister, and like half the kids in the neighborhood. And a lot of stuff goes down, right? E.T. and Elliot get drunk together. E.T. and Elliot get sick together. E.T. goes out trick-or-treating with the neighborhood kids on Halloween. And while all this stuff is going on, there's a particular group of people in the neighborhood who do not notice at all that a sweet, homesick alien has landed and is amongst their children. And before we go there, let's remind ourselves, E.T. and his alien buddies were not the kind of movie aliens who tried to blend in with humanity. You know, make themselves look like humans and talk like humans and dress like humans. Not at all. One glance at E.T. and you knew for sure that he was not from Petaluma, California. All right, so while all this is going down, there is one particular group in the neighborhood who takes no notice at all. Not one adult, not one single adult, including Elliot's mother, notices in the least little bit that not only has an alien landed, but he is cavorting all around the neighborhood with their kids. And that, my friends, is what it was like to grow up in the late 70s. That is what it was like to come of age, at least for me and my brother and a lot of our friends, and apparently a bunch of kids out in suburban California. That's what it was like to come of age in the late 70s. The adults in our lives were out to lunch.